Grace and peace to you from God our Creator, from Christ who weeps with us, and from the Spirit who gathers us in love. We join together in our responsive call to worship this morning. Blessed are those who mourn, for God meets us in our grief. When our hearts break open, God gathers our tears. When hope feels buried, Christ stands at the tomb with us. Let us worship the one who weeps with us and calls life from death. Let us join together in our opening hymn, number 747.
The love of God, the grace of Christ, and the community, the communion of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Welcome to you to this service of worship this morning. Welcome to those who are here in person. Special welcome to those who are live streaming. We are glad that you are part of the community today. I see some folks who are new to the community, to the congregation. We extend a special warm welcome to you, and we hope that you feel welcome. And if you let yourself be known after the service at the welcome table, we have a special gift for you today. So, our prayer has begun. Let's continue our prayer together. And welcome to those who are just coming on. Come on in, folks. Come on in. Don't be shy. Come on in. Good. We continue our prayer together. Loving God, gentle Spirit, we live and move and we have our being in you. In the face of all the things that weary us and worry us, we remember that your love for creation echoes across the centuries. This Lenten season, we have attempted to follow in the footsteps of Jesus And we have remembered sometimes that you are never far from our sorrows, that you walk with us, that you share our tears, you share our confusion about the world, you share our pain. You accompany us, O God, closely, especially during those moments when we don't know which way to turn. In this time we share together today as a congregation, renew our trust in your promise of resurrection. Draw near to us when we need you the most with the love that will not let us go. And in this time of silence, we open our hearts to you. We offer these prayers, both spoken and unspoken, in the Spirit of Jesus Christ, the one who taught the disciples to pray the words we sing together now. One of the great honors of this vocation I have is the opportunity to stand before you on a Sunday morning and to say these words, or something like these words, each week, that anyone who's in Christ is a new creation. The old life in us is going away, and a new life has been born in us and is being born in us and will be born in us. This is God's promise. This is God's gift to us as individuals and as a community. Thanks be to God for God's grace, for God's generosity and compassion for the world. Peace be with you. Let's take a moment and share words and gestures of peace with one another.
Our sacred story today is a paraphrase of a story from the Gospel of John, chapter 11, verses 1 to 45. This story is adapted from the Book of Belonging, written by Mariko Clark, and is called The Shape of Sadness.
Like many siblings, Martha, Mary, and Lazarus had learned to share. Some things they shared with huffs, eye rolls, and reluctance, like sweets and forgiveness. Other things they were oh so happy to share, like chores, secrets, and their friend Jesus. They each loved Jesus wholly and uniquely, and Jesus loved them back wholly and uniquely. At least, that's what they thought. Yet here were Mary and Martha preparing for Lazarus' funeral, and Jesus was nowhere to be found. Martha cried.
I thought Jesus might heal him.
Mary sobbed.
How could he stay away?
They had sent a message to Jesus, warning him that Lazarus was very sick. Long days had passed as they waited and hoped for Jesus. Lazarus got sicker and sicker and then died. And now that it was much too late, they got a word that Jesus was on his way. It's not fair. It doesn't make sense. When they had heard Jesus was coming, Martha ran to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Grief comes out in many shapes, sometimes silence, sometimes busyness, and sometimes, oftentimes, anger. Martha stormed at Jesus, saying,
If you had been here, Lazarus wouldn't have died.
Jesus listened as she went on. Her jaw and fist clenched. She pleaded,
But I know it's not too late. I know God will give you whatever you ask.
She pleaded. Her hope was all tangled up with her anger and sorrow. Jesus did not entangle the feelings. He said gently,
Lazarus will live again.
Martha snapped at Jesus.
I know that. Someday he will live again. But I'm sad now.
Jesus sat with her. How could he explain God's dream? How could he fit the words around the kingdom of already and almost, where they only had peeks and glimpses of how things should be?
Lazarus will live because of me. Death is not the end for anyone who trusts me. Do you trust me?
Martha looked at Jesus and felt her heart ache. Sometimes things sit side by side, hope and sorrow, promises and disappointment, sickness and praise, heaven and earth. They squish and bump together in our hearts until we ache with the stretch of it all. In spite of it, Martha responded,
I trust you. You're the Messiah, the rescuer.
Eventually, Mary also came out to meet Jesus, followed by the huge crowd that had gathered to mourn Lazarus. Collapsing at Jesus' feet, Mary looked up at her dear friend. She was weary and battered. For days, waves of sorrow, hope, rage, and disbelief had swept over her again and again. But Jesus was here now, solid and silent and much too late. Mary gulped down a sob and cried out to Jesus.
If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died.
Mary cried and cried and cried. Her friends and family joined her until it seemed as though their tears would soak the earth in sorrow. Jesus felt his own heart ache, and he began to weep with them. Sometimes it is so very hard to be a human. And just because he knew the end of the story, it didn't make the messy middle go away. Death, suffering, sadness, these things didn't belong in the kingdom of heaven. But in Jesus, heaven bumped against earth, hope against sorrow. Struggling to get the words out, Jesus rasped,
Show me where you put him.
They all walked slowly to the tomb, trailing tears behind them. But when Jesus told them to roll the stone away from the entrance, Martha jumped in front. Martha protested, saying,
His body has been dead for 4 days. It's probably starting to stink.
But Jesus was God in a human body. Jesus was stronger than death. Smiling through his tears, Jesus told Martha,
Watch and see God's glory.
and he prayed, thanking God for sending him to earth, this messy place of hope and sorrow. And then he opened his eyes, opened his mouth, and shouted. He called to his beloved friend, his voice echoing out beyond the mysteries of death.
Lazarus, Lazarus, come out here.
Shuffle, shuffle, gasp. Lazarus walked out of the tomb. His feet were bound, his hands tied, and his face covered with a cloth. Jesus said to them,
Unbind him and let him go.
Now the tears were of joy, thankfulness, and wonder. What? Why? How? They had no answers, only a peek. Like the peeled-back glimpse at the river with John, Jesus had showed them again what God's kingdom was like. A kingdom with no suffering, a kingdom with no grief, a kingdom with no death.
You can just leave it there. Good morning again, everyone. I'm going to invite anyone who wants to come a little bit closer and share this time together to come up now. It doesn't have to just be kids, any adults who want to come too. We're going to have a little mindful moment together that relates to what we're going through as a congregation, as people living in this world, and related to a little bit to our story today. One of the trickiest things about being a person is all of our really big, messy feelings that we carry inside of us. Last week, Hugh talked about his personal grump factor. Is that what you called it, Hugh? Yeah. So being grumpy is a big feeling. And sometimes we have lots of other big feelings that feel like they're stuck inside our bodies and we don't know what to do with them. Sometimes they're sadness, sometimes they're excitement and joy, and sometimes they're anger and frustration, sometimes it's loneliness. There's all different feelings. And sometimes it's helpful to create rituals that allow us to be with those feelings. I always think that it's important to be with our feelings, even if it's really uncomfortable. So lament is a special ritual that gives us an opportunity to sit with our sadness. So imagine that we're just sitting right next to our sadness and it's a friend with us. And so we're going to practice a lament a bit today. So that's a big word, a word that we don't always use, but it's talked about in faith communities and the Bible. Does anyone know what lament means? It's about deep sadness that we can feel way down deep inside our bodies. And sometimes it gets expressed through wailing or weeping. That's like big, loud cries. Do you know sometimes when we cry and it's not just like sad tears, but it's like, and it takes over our body? That could be lament. And there are times in the Bible that there's lament that happens. And I connect it most with the Psalms. There's some Psalms of lament where the whole Psalm, almost, people are calling out to God in their deep sadness. So I'm wondering today if you've ever lost someone you loved. You can raise your hand if you feel comfortable. Maybe a person or a pet, a grandparent or a friend. That can be really hard, and it brings up lots of different feelings. Or maybe it's not someone, but something you loved. Maybe a special toy. I remember my little cousin one time lost her lovey puppy, and it was a big tragedy, and we had to go looking all over for that stuffy. Or maybe you've lost a dream that you've had, something you had dreamt about and hoped for, and it didn't happen or didn't happen yet, and that can be really hard. Or maybe you've lost an opportunity. You didn't get on a team. Did anyone ever try out for a team and they weren't picked? Yeah, it sucks. Or you didn't succeed at getting a job that you'd worked so hard and you'd been through many interviews and then you didn't get it. Or maybe you'd auditioned for a part in a choir or a play and you didn't get that. And that kind of rejection can be really hard. Or maybe you're sad about losing a phase of life or a relationship. Maybe sad about moving and having to say goodbye to your neighbors and things that are familiar. Or maybe you've had the sadness from breaking up with someone or going through a divorce in a family. There's all kinds of things that we can lose in life. So loss fills us with lots of sadness, and that sadness shows up in just how deeply we are loved. That shows up because we've loved so much. If we haven't been really loving, then often we don't have those big feelings. It's just kind of mild feelings and we can move on. It's easy to try to fix or to chase away our sadness when it comes because it can feel uncomfortable. And we don't want to be vulnerable around people. But what moves it through our bodies in a healthy way is to do what Jesus and Mary and Martha did. And that was to simply be sad and to express that. And that might come out in lots of different ways, and to not resist it or hide it. And it takes courage to do that. So we're going to try something together today. So I'm going to invite you, if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes for a minute and hold a picture in your mind of who or what you might have lost. And then try putting one hand on your heart. So we're going to put one hand on our heart and the other hand right on our belly. And take some deep breaths. Spend some time breathing as you sit in whatever sadness you might be feeling. Notice what your sadness feels like in your body. Is it heavy? Does it feel hot or wobbly? Or is it squeezing your insides? Notice what thoughts you have and share them with God in your head. So maybe thoughts like, it's not fair, or I feel forgotten, or you let me down, or why? Think about how you can show love and care to someone when they are lamenting. When you're ready, open your eyes. I'm wondering if you feel comfortable, if you can share what that might have felt like. What kind of things did you feel in your body? What did you feel, Parker? Explosion? Yeah. Sometimes when we have big feelings inside, it does feel like an explosion. Anyone else want to share? Less nervous, yeah. The breaths help. And what kind of thoughts might you have had? Maybe feeling like it wasn't fair. Sometimes it's okay to say that to God. God is able to hear all of the feelings we have. And I'm wondering, I feel like lament is something we do as a community. So I'm wondering what we can do to help people and care for people when they're lamenting. What are some ideas? Maybe we can just sit with them, not say anything. Or go with them and do something they have to do so that it doesn't feel as heavy. There's lots of things we can do. So I invite you this week, if you're having big feelings, to sit and to put your hand on your heart and your hand on your belly and to take some deep breaths. So I hope that the kids have a fun time in Sunday school, can take the shepherd's crook today, and we'll see you later. Who wants to take it? Can I take it? Thanks.
On the shoreline, will you take me with you as you rise? Dearest water, why do I even bother expecting things to stay the same when rivers run and people change and everything ends, everything ends. Fear, friends, conversations we won't have again, everything ends. Sweet seasons help me to know the reasons for letting go of all those pretty things. Blue heron, teach me how to care when murky waters pull around my feet. Everything ends, everything ends. Fierce friends, conversations we won't have again. Everything ends. Ooh. Darling Mabel, only if you're able, please share with me the sweetness of your heart. Hello, starlight, shining bright on a quiet night. Will you tell me all you know about the dark? Everything ends, everything ends. Fierce friends, conversations we won't have again. Everything ends. We can start again. We can start again. To the white pine that's standing tall on the shoreline, will you take me with you as you rise? Take me with you, will you? Take me with you, will you? Take me with you as you rise, as you rise.
Thank you, Maggie, for your very appropriate song. It also feels fitting today as we talk about grief, which just happened to come up in the lectionary this week. This story, Hugh and I have been finding a bit this Lent that the stories that come up in the lectionary seem to be echoing or shaping where our community of faith is at. So as I hear the rain pouring on the roof, it reminds me of Jesus weeping. There is a moment in the story that we heard today in the shape of sadness that feels almost too honest to say out loud. Mary and Martha and their community are grieving together. They are sad and afraid. They are angry. They are heartbroken together. And when Jesus finally arrives, they say what many of us have thought, but rarely dare to say out loud in church. If you had been there, this wouldn't have happened. If you had been there, it's not polite, it's not theological, it's not tied up in a pretty bow. It's grief speaking. Because grief doesn't come in neat sentences. As we heard, grief comes in many different shapes. Sometimes silence, sometimes busyness, and sometimes anger. And if we're honest, we know this. We've lived it. Grief over people we've lost, grief over relationships that have ended, grief over bodies that don't work the way they used to, grief over dreams that didn't come true, grief over the state of the world, grief over the life we thought we would be living by now. And here's what strikes me most about this story. Jesus doesn't correct them. He doesn't say, well, actually, there's a bigger plan. He doesn't rush them towards hope. He doesn't tidy up their theology. What he does do is listen. He receives their anger, their sorrow, their confusion, and then Jesus weeps. The shortest verse in the Bible, and maybe the most important, Jesus wept, period. Jesus wept. Not because he didn't know what would happen next, not because the story ends in death, but because the grief is real, because the loss matters, because love makes us vulnerable to heartbreak. And that might be one of the deepest truths of our faith. We worship a God who does not stand at a distance from our pain, but enters into it. A God who does not explain away our suffering, but sits beside us in it. A God who weeps. There's a line from Kate Bowler's writing that our group Lent study has been working through that has stayed with me this Lent. She talks about those moments that divide into before and after. A phone call, a diagnosis, a decision. The moment when everything changes and there is no going back. And she says, we don't get to choose those moments, but we do have to learn how to live on the other side of them. In Kate's Everything Happens podcast conversation with the Reverend Liz Tichenor, they talk about what it means to be the church on our worst days. What it means to be the church on our worst days. Not our best days, not our polished, put together Sunday morning selves, but our worst days. The days when life has just fallen apart. Liz shares about losing her mother, and then long after losing her baby son. She was utterly broken. And she says sometimes that feels something that feels incredibly important. She says, the church was at its best not when it had answers, but when people chose to let their hearts break with hers. To let their hearts break with hers. To show up, to sit in the mess, because life and being the church is messy, and to carry what she could not carry on her own. She describes it like this. This is so much of why we come together. To make that choice of letting our hearts break with one another. Letting our hearts break with one another. She talks about, what she's talking about here is really solidarity and grief. We are reminded of Jesus' words from the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And I wonder if that is what Jesus is doing at the tomb. Not fixing, not explaining, not bypassing grief, but joining in, standing in it, weeping in it. Because here's the truth. Resurrection does not erase grief. Even in this story, even with Lazarus walking out of the tomb, the grief that came before is still real. The loss still mattered. The love that made that loss hurt so much is still what matters most. And maybe that's part of what makes this moment we are in as a congregation so tender. Because there is grief here too. Not just one kind of grief, but many. And I want to name honestly that I am grieving. My family and I are grieving. The ending of this chapter of ministry with all of you. The loss of a role that I loved. The loss of a church family that has shaped us. The loss of dreams, of what we thought we might build together, create together, become together. And there is grief in uncertainty too. What comes next? What will it look like? How will this unfold financially, vocationally, personally? There are a lot of unknowns, and I know that grief is not mine alone. This decision by session to eliminate positions, including my own and the Director of Faith Formation, will shape the life and the ministry of this congregation. There is loss in that. Loss of relationships, perhaps the loss of programs or things might look different, the loss of ways of being the church that mattered deeply to so many. And that's important to say. Before we rush on to what is next, we need to grieve what is ending. Because one of the things we do in church and in life is to try to move too quickly past grief. We want to fix it, explain it, wrap it up in a tidy bow. But grief doesn't work like that. It comes in waves, it lingers, it surprises us. And we heard hope and sorrow, promises and disappointments. They squish and they bump together in our hearts. And if we don't make space for grief, it doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. So maybe part of our calling right now as a community is not to have the answers, not to rush to the future, but to practice being church on our worst days, to let our hearts break with one another, to show up, to sit in the hard places, to trust that love looks like presence more than solutions, because that's what Jesus models at the tomb with Mary, with Martha, with the crowd. He doesn't stand apart, he steps in. And maybe that's where this story leaves us, not with certainty, not with everything resolved, but with a God who stands at the tomb and calls life forward out of death. Calls life forward out of death. And a community called to do the same. Because after Lazarus comes out, Jesus says something important. Unbind him and let him go. The community has a role as they witness a miracle together, to unwrap the grave clothes, to make space for life again, to walk with one another into whatever comes next. And that brings me to a blessing from Kate Bowler, a blessing for life after loss, as she calls it. And I want to speak it into this moment, not as something that fixes anything, but as something that names the truth of where we are. She says, "Blessed are we who feel the wound of fresh loss, of a loss no matter how fresh that still makes our voice crack all these years later. We who are stuck in the impossibility of it, frozen in disbelief. How can this be? It wasn't supposed to be this way. Blessed are we fumbling around for easy answers or quick truths to try to make this go down easier. We who are dissatisfied with the shallow theology and trite platitudes. Blessed are we who instead demand a blessing, because we have wrestled with God and are here, wounded, broken, changed. Blessed are we who keep parenting, who keep our relationships and friendships and jobs afloat, and who keep stocking the pantry. Because what choice do we have but to move forward with life, with a life that we didn't choose, with a loss we thought we couldn't live without? One small step, one small act of hope at a time. So maybe our question at Knox isn't how do we fix this, or even how do we move on? Maybe the question is, how do we stay with God, with each other, with the grief, with the love that I know exists here, long enough to see what new life might still be possible? Because the God we meet in this story is not a God who avoids sorrow, not a God who pushes back against anger or hurt, not a God who resists the mess of the situation, not a God who avoids hard questions, not a God of easy answers, but a God who weeps. A God who stays, a God who calls us even now towards life. Amen. Let us join together. Let us join together in hymn 604, O Christ who wept when grief was raw.
O Christ, you wept when grief was raw, and felt for those who mourned their friend. Come close to where we would not be, and hold us, hold us numbed by this life's end. The well-loved voice is silent now, and we have much we meant to say. Collect our lost and wandering words, and keep them till the endless day. We try to hold what is not here, and fear for what we do not know. Oh, take our hands in yours, good Lord, and free us, free us to let our friend go. In all our loneliness and doubt, through what we cannot realize, address us from your empty tomb, and tell us that life never dies.
Please be seated. Peace be with you. The life and ministry of Knox is AKA announcements. We've a lot going on at Knox these days, and I want to bring some of our ministries to your attention. If you are graduated from high school and into your 30s and want to join us for lunch today, there's a young adult gathering. If you registered, join us for lunch. If you did not register, join us for lunch. There's extra, yeah. And as well, the care team, several times a year, does this amazing ministry. There's a table set up in the lobby with a list with note cards. You can choose a name off of a list with a sticker, put on an envelope, and write a note card, an Easter card, to someone in our congregation who can use an extra word of hope and peace and grace these days. And so grateful to the care team for this ministry. So hope you can participate in that just in the lobby. They make it very, very easy for us to reach out in love to our siblings in our midst. After service today, 2 p.m. in the room upstairs here, there's going to be a climate vigil that's sponsored by our creation care team. We have a guest speaker present, and you're all welcome to participate in that. You might not know that today is actually World Water Day. It's observed annually on the 22nd of March, and it raises global awareness of freshwater and sanitation challenges around the world. So thank you to our creation care team for helping Knox keep connected with our theology of ecology. As well, next week, we have a great concert happening here in the evening, 7 p.m., our music scholars, not to be missed. Jot that on your calendar. Hard to believe the Holy Week is coming up. Next week is Palm Sunday. Easter sneaks up on us every year. There will be an email sent out this week with a list of all of the worship opportunities and community opportunities for the congregation, including a meal here on Maundy, Thursday, and breakfast on Easter Sunday morning as well. That will come. Watch for that in your inboxes this week. After service next week as well, pick up some treats from the youth bake sale. And if you happen to bring something to be sold at the bake sale, bring that in. There'll be some tables set up for you to drop that off when you arrive to worship next week. Knox Caring Kitchen is starting up. This is a really important ministry of Knox. We've been doing this for several years now. Through the summer months, Knox provides a weekly meal to the residents of a better tent city. These are vulnerable people who would otherwise probably be living on the streets and have small homes in which to live, and they rely on community organizations like us to help them out. And so every week, a team from Knox will gather in the kitchen and make a meal and deliver a meal to the folks at a Better Tent City. And so the schedule for this season, it starts, when does it start? It starts in April and runs until October. And we require 4 kitchen helpers, a delivery person, and a kitchen lead. We've got a few kitchen leads. A little bit of training is required for kitchen lead. If you want to become a kitchen lead, it's 6 hours of online training. Vaughn, where's Vaughn? Here's Vaughn. Would you stand for a moment, Vaughn, so everybody knows who you are? Vaughn is the person who's coordinating this. If you have questions about this ministry, check with Vaughn, and information will come on how you can sign up for that. So please keep that in your prayers and in your mind. I will say this one now. So the fruits of the Spirit. I talked last week about in times of grief, in times of pain, in times of uncertainty, how we, what are the values we choose to embody? When we can't change a situation, we can think about how we want to show up in a situation. And I used as an example this card, which a young person in Waterloo Park gave to me one day. And we had a couple of folks this week say, could you send me a picture of that? So we printed out a bunch, and in a basket at the welcome table, there are little Fruits of the Spirit cards, complete with the the smudges from the rain that happened that day. So feel free to grab one and put it on your fridge and remind yourself of some of the qualities, the values by which we can choose to live. As well, good news from the Refugee Committee. The Ala Al-Andal family arrived from Lebanon earlier this week. This is the refugee family Knox has been supporting for many years now, waiting for them to arrive. They're living with family, and later on will be moving into apartment, which we are providing for them. More information will come on how you can be involved in supporting this family. And so many thanks to our refugee sponsorship folks in the congregation who have been working so hard to make this happen. So keep the Ala Al-Andal family in your prayers. Is there anything else? No. This congregation exists because of your generosity. Thank you for the gifts that you give so that we can embody Christ's ministries in our neighborhoods here. Thank you for your gifts. Let's take a few moments now and give gifts, to think about how we give gifts, and to pray for the present and the future of Knox Waterloo.
When all else is gone, these things remain: faith, hope, and love. Faith, hope, and love. While our life goes on, these things sustain: faith, hope, and love. Faith, hope, and love. Faith finds the path. Hope is the start. Love keeps the world close to God's heart. Faith may be strong, hope may be sure, but for the world, love is the cure. When all else is gone, through dark and pain, love will still burn. Love will be born. When our faith is gone, when hope is vain, love moves the stone. Love, love alone. Love moves the stone. Love, love alone. We give you what you own, whatever gift may be. All that we have is yours alone, our trust, O God, from thee.
Please be seated. Life is lived in the tension between grief and hope. Life is lived in Good Fridays and Easter Sundays, and those live together. Rarely is life binary, where we are entirely in one and not touched by the other. And so in a spirit of hope, we offer prayers for the Knox community today. And to help us do that, Kathy Sauvé will lead us in this narrative prayer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kathy Sauve, and I'm a member of Session here. And this morning, in our reflective time, I wanted to give you all a message that I think goes along with the song that was just sung of faith, hope, and love. Last week, we had our annual meeting, and we had 40 people that came in the sanctuary. We had over 40 plus devices that were online. And I think it speaks to the hope that we all have for this community in this time of grief. Dave Dougal led us through financial slides, and Sue Sr. led us through the visual stewardship resource, which is just a lot of pictures of this great community. Mark Harper also provided additional comments, helped to answer questions. And I wanted to let you know these resources are all available on our website. If you go on the website under About, you will see reports. And everything is there, including the staff structure assessment from Credence. We wanted to make it really easy for everyone to see that information. I actually asked if I could speak today. I think we're all kind of processing everything that's been happening. And I had a bit of a God nudge, I called it this week, and I just felt that I wanted to come and give a message that acknowledges the fact, and it's as Courtney said, and Hugh, the messages have just been aligning. I didn't know what the reading was today, but my message today that God was inviting me to share was that we can both grieve and we can feel hope for our future. And we are grieving. And I want to thank Courtney for her message today. It was such a brave message to share. And we do love and we care for you, your family, for Carol and her family. And we really do, our hearts can break, but we can also feel hope at the same time. I asked for a couple of pictures to be shared because sometimes during grief we look back and we start to think about things. These are my kids. The child on the left there, that was Andrew when he was about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5. We were in the old church at the time. And I thought about these pictures because they represent the hope and excitement we felt at that time as we looked ahead. And you can see, so much hope in those moments. The second picture is from the Sunday when the ground had been broken during the week for this building, and we prayed for our community in the parking lot. And with heavy equipment around us, we had a whole bunch of plastic shovels for the kids. And those are my kids in there as well, digging. And they remember that day. I was asking them about it this week. I was one of the people who voted for us to build this church. And I acknowledge the world is very different now, but I still carry that hope and belief in the future of our community. A few months before we moved into the church, we actually had a Sunday. We'd been watching this building go up, and we had a Sunday where we were handed markers, and we were allowed to come in and write our wishes. I'm seeing some nodding heads behind these walls. Ours is up in the balcony. Of course, my boys were 8 and 10 at the time, so we had to go to the highest spot and put our wishes and our hopes for the church. Not only has this church been an important part of our faith journey as a family, but we have a group of friends that we have because of what we've done here, volunteering, getting to know people's children. And our friendships formed around the time that these pictures were taken. And when we went on a trip recently, we commented on how many friends actually so deeply know each other's children as well. And that's part of this faith formation that we have and that will continue to carry forward. It was also around the time of these pictures that I first learned that the Knox community believes that we are called to discern our gifts. And I also learned that when we discern our gift, that God may have a few surprises for us. We were encouraged to pray, to listen, to explore. And I do recall questioning if I heard him right when I heard that I should lead junior high, grade 7 and 8 kids. I'd never done that before. But I trusted that he had a plan for me that I couldn't imagine, and he did. It brought me some of my greatest joy. And at Knox, when we get called to try new things, we care for each other. Dave Ogram actually cared for me and helped me to get comfortable leading the kids. And then my husband and I started to lead it for many years. And this year I stepped out of my comfort zone again when I felt a nudge to volunteer with our music scholars with the junior choir that you may have heard a few weeks ago. And what a fitting song they sang when they said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." I know that I learned from Veronica and Vlad, and I hope they learned a little from me as well. Caring for each other and helping us to nurture our gifts is part of our Knox tradition. It gives me hope and makes me believe in our future. I share this history with you because the connection between past and present is important. We were reminded at last week's annual meeting by Greg Shepard that Jean Shantz, or Mrs. Shantz, as many of you might know her by, made this connection for us when we were new to the church. The day we voted for this church and our community, her words helped us to connect the past with our future. And they were recorded. So I've spent some time this week listening to Jean's words. And it inspired me to speak to you today, so I thank Greg for this reminder and also for his words of inspiration. I want us to remember that we've done hard things before, and we've been stronger because of them, and I believe we will do that again. Each of us will need to make a choice about where we fit into this future and discern what God's plans are for us. I'm committed to being part of these plans and these next steps, and I'm ready to follow his call. Even when he called me to speak today, and I thought, I feel very uncomfortable, but I'm going to do it. Anticipating that things will look different than I planned when he calls me, and I'm welcoming surprises that will come along. It gives me hope for our future. As a member of Session, I want to share just briefly what you can expect from us. We have a ministry continuity group. These are the people who are meeting right now to kind of keep the lights on. How do we make sure that things continue in the short term? And we won't get everything right. So we want to hear from you. We want to know what you need so that we can do that. We have a group that's looking ahead, that's a vision group called the Restructure Coordination Team, and that group's thinking about our future. We're asking questions like, what can we do to make sure that our church stays vital? How do we support you? How do we make sure that you have care when it's needed? That our faith formation stays strong so that people will have stories like the one I shared today. And we have a communications team trying to do our best with caring, honest, and timely messages for all of you. And if you're not getting what you need, tell us, because we can do that for you. And this community is going to need each of you. So I encourage you to ask God where he sees you in our future. And if it sounds like it's outside your comfort zone, I'm just going to say you might be hearing the right thing. Remember that we will care and support each other because it's a Knox tradition. Offer your help, listen for opportunities, pay attention to that quiet voice of encouragement. So I wanted you to hear Jean's words. We have a video that was prepared at one point in time a while ago, and we're going to share that now.
I marvel at the wisdom, the courage, and the faith of our congregations over the past. Let us ponder about some of those momentous times. First, there was the wisdom, the courage, and the faith of the early citizens in 1927 when this building was originally built. Those were not particularly good economic times. But the congregation was diligent and the task was accomplished, but that took wisdom, courage, and faith. Second, there was the wisdom, the courage, and faith of people like Jack Bainan and many others, including Walter McLean, who inspired the congregation in the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s to launch into expansion and improvements. Later, the parking lot was purchased. Then there was the wisdom, the courage, and the faith of the congregation which accomplished mortgage-free in '83. Can you remember the joy we felt? All of these changes took wisdom, courage, and faith.
So let us pray today for our community that we will have wisdom, courage, and faith. And together we say, Amen.
Friends, may the God who created you hold your grief and tenderness, honoring every loss, every question, every fear. May Christ, who wept at the tomb, stand beside you in love, meeting you in the messy middle and gently calling you towards life again. And may the Spirit who moves among us gather us into community so that we might carry and unbind one another and walk together in hope. Go in peace and go in love. Amen.
I'm Hugh Donnelly, one of the ministers at Knox, Waterloo. Thank you for being a part of the worshiping community today. You can find us online at knoxwaterloo.ca, and you are always welcome to call us at 519-886-4150. This broadcast is made possible by you, listeners and friends of Knox, who support Knox's broadcast ministry. Please consider making a donation in gratitude as you are able, and may the peace of Christ be with you.